Do you find yourself scrambling for what to post next? Losing track of drafts and ideas and almost finished half-baked posts? Well, you're not alone. In today's episode, I'm going to be breaking down a system that I use for my own content creation and for my clients that helps me stay on top of ideas, drafts, posts that have been posted, and posts that are almost ready to go out. Stay tuned for episode 7 of the Keep Creating podcast. All right, everyone, welcome back to the Keep Creating podcast. This is episode number 7, and we're talking about content systems today. So if you clicked on this video, obviously you are interested in this topic. There's, a ton of ways to approach this, but I just want to give you a little bit of backstory. So if you've been a fan of the show for a few episodes, you'll know that I have a career in marketing and social media management. And I have spent years working with agencies and in-house and figuring out a whole bunch of tools and systems and processes. And I finally have one that works for me. And so the first thing I want to say is find a system that works for you. It might be this system. It might be a different system. It might be something that you iterate on based on what I say or what you hear, what you pull together. But the main important thing is that you find something that works for you and the way that you create content. Now, because I have a career in this, I have gotten into a habit of pre-planning and pre-preparing a lot of content. I already have a document full of ideas. When it's time to create that content, I pull certain ideas, I create that content, and I move forward. We'll go into detail in this episode, but I want you to know that you're not alone. There are a ton of business owners and people that I work with who get lost in the sauce, get lost in their ideas, get lost in drafts, things get half finished or not published. There's all kinds of things. And today, hopefully, I'll be able to help walk you through something that can help you eliminate that roadblock so that you can post consistently and strategically. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is why creators and people who post on social media get stuck in this, what we're going to call reactive cycle. So a reactive cycle is you see something on social media and you immediately want to copy it, or you have an idea and you want to do everything in one sitting right then and there. Now, I do believe that there's a time and place for reactive content. There are some things that do require a response. However, if you want to be consistent on social media and you want to be consistent in your posting, you're not going to want to post every single day, especially if you're someone who's actually running a business. Even if you're the social media manager of a business, if you get into this career long enough, you'll know that creating content and posting it every single day or every time it's the day that a post needs to go out is draining. It's not helpful, and it takes, frankly, too much time every single day for you to do that effectively and strategically. Most of the time, this is due to the result of, people get a big dopamine boost whenever they actually complete something and it goes out, and especially if it does well. If you are posting in the moment and you start getting that instant gratification, those likes and comments and shares and all that stuff starts rolling in, it's dopamine and it's addictive. And, it can feel really good. But once it starts dying down, you're tired again. And you enter this daily cycle of perpetually being tired. That's not helpful for anyone. The other reason that a lot of people fall into this trap is because it's overwhelming. They see content, they create a list of ideas, or they save a bunch of posts that they never return to, or you sit down to create the content and you want it to look a certain way. So you spend 20, 30, 40 minutes fixing something that no one's gonna notice, or you spend 30, 40, 50 minutes learning how to do something for your post to flop, and then you get upset. It's a vicious cycle. And so those are just a few reasons why people get stuck in this space. But today we're going to help you break out of that, because when you're stuck in this loop, it's a fast track to burnout. When you're stuck in this loop, you don't have the space or the energy to forward think or forward plan your content. You don't have the energy to be strategic in what content should you be creating, not just following trends. Essentially, you don't have a system that is set up for you to be able to be on the long-term journey of posting on social media, because it's not a fast track. It's not get rich quick. It's not something that can turn around instantly. This social media, personal branding, marketing, all of this is a long-term play. It's a long game. And to be in the long game, you have to show up consistently and strategically. I've done enough rambling about the why and the setup. Let's get into the actual helpful tips. The first thing that we're going to start with are the folders that every social media manager, content manager, whatever you want to call yourself, needs in order to stay organized. I call it the core four. And those four folders are ideas, drafts, ready to post, and published. If you have these four folders set up, you can organize all of your content, get all of your ideas out, plan everything around this, and stay organized so that in the future, when you want to see if an idea worked, you want to see, did you execute on the idea? Did you finish that draft? All of these half-baked, half-done things you can come back to, and you can see the success of what worked and what didn't, and be strategic about where to take your content next. Now, as far as where you set this up, that doesn't really matter anymore. Some people like the Google Drive system, some people like the Microsoft system, some people like Trello or Notion or Canva. It really doesn't matter where this system lives. What matters most is that you pick a space, an area, even on your computer, you pick a space or an area that you want to continue to come back to, where it will house all of these things. For the sake of this episode and the way that we're discussing it, I'm going to be referencing Google. So building all of this in Google Drive. So in Google Drive, you'll have a content folder. In that content folder, you will have these four folders: ideas, drafts, ready to post, and published. All right, so now you have your four folders set up, but what goes in the four folders? Let's break it down. The first folder is ideas. This is your catch-all. This is where you can store screenshots, you can store voice memos, you can have half-written notes, you can, however you capture your ideas, links to content, whatever. All of that will go into your ideas folder. The reason that you're creating this folder is so you don't lose the idea. If you're someone who frequently comes up with ideas, you'll know that if you don't get it out of your brain, you might lose it forever. If you've read Rick Rubin's The Creative Act, he goes into a section that talks about how ideas want to be executed on. And if you don't execute on the idea, it may go to someone else and they may execute on it. So also, no idea is completely original. We're all sharing and stealing from one another idea-wise. We just find different ways to iterate on it. But the main thing for this folder is that you use it as a catch-all. It's important to transfer those notes out of your voice memos, out of your notes, out of the scribble on a napkin somewhere. It's important to make sure that all of these things end up in your ideas folder so that they all have a home, they're all in the same place, and that when it's time for you to sit down and actually create content or execute on an idea, you don't have to say, oh, where was it, in this notes app, or was it in this notes folder, or where's that piece of paper? You don't have to do any of that. It's all in one spot. That is the first step to keeping organized. This is also one of the hardest steps for most people. You need to get in a habit of putting those ideas into this folder. One of the best ways that I've thought to do this is to take 5 to 10 minutes at the end of your day, whether that's a work day or this is a hobby, a personal, whatever, 5 or 10 minutes, all the ideas that you had for the day, just do the task. Put it on your list, make it the last thing on your list, transfer your ideas into the folder. The next folder, drafts. This is the folder where all of those ideas start to get filled out. I'm someone who works off of outlines, and so I reference outlines. I don't really script anything fully, but the drafts folder is where all of my outlines live. So for this podcast specifically, I have a folder that's ideas. And then under that, I have a folder that's drafts. And in those drafts, I have an outline for each one of these episodes. What am I going to be talking about? What are the things that I want to make sure that I'm hitting every time I turn on this camera? You know, whenever I have different ideas of content that I'm working on, this is also where I create outlines of what do I need to make this content? Do I need to film extra B-roll? Do I need to come up with a voiceover? What do I want to say? What's my shot list? Is there a visual aspect of this that I need? This is more of a planning document and ready for execution. So this is where you start to really fill out those ideas. The drafts folder is also where some ideas even get chopped. You know, that half-baked idea that I had at 2 a.m. while I was feeding my baby, if I put that into my ideas folder and I come back 2 days later ready to execute on it, and I can't come up with a concept or it doesn't fully fit my strategy at the time, it gets scrapped. And that's okay. I just know that one, I captured that idea in my ideas folder, and two, when it was time to build it, it just didn't work, and that's fine. You just pick a different idea and you move on to the next idea. That's complete. That's exactly what the drafts folder system is for. Now, the third folder can get a little complicated. It's the ready to post folder. This is where completed content that has not been posted lives. If you're someone who batches your content or someone who is getting in the habit of pre-planning all of your content and creating it before it needs to go out, this is where that content lives. This is not where the half-done video lives. This is where the completed video, it just hasn't been posted, lives. And I know that can be a little confusing for some people, but you want to think of this as your inventory, your runway of how many posts do I have in the bank in order to sustain posting consistently. So you want to have at least, I recommend at least 3 to 4 posts in the bank at all times, because sometimes you might have an idea the day of that's really fun and you want to execute on. That's completely fine. I know some people like to schedule and create a month in advance. Personally, I think that's a little too far unless your content is 100% evergreen. However, like I said in the beginning, find what works for you. If it works for you to plan 3 or 4 posts ahead, fine. If it works for you to plan 2 weeks ahead, fine. A month, fine. But this is where your done content lives before it gets posted. And finally, the fourth folder in this system is the published folder. Once your content has been published, you want to move the video file or the image file, whatever content you're creating, from ready to post to published. This helps you keep a running list of what's actually been posted, what has gone up on the internet. This is also where you can come back and say this, you can leave notes and say this post did well, this one didn't do so well. If posts did well, obviously you want to remix them and find a new way to talk about and share that content. If it didn't do so well, but you really believe in the topic, you can do the same thing. Maybe that format didn't work. Maybe it needed to be a video instead of an image. Maybe it needed to be a carousel instead of a video. This is where you can fine tune your strategy and see what types of content, what categories of content, what topics of content are working for you. You know, just posting into the void does nothing if you're not tracking your results. And this is where the strategy part comes in. So you don't want to just throw stuff up there and guess. You want to make sure that you're taking time to analyze your content, analyze what has gone out, what's working, what's not, so that you can iterate and move forward. All right, next we're going to talk about some tools to help you streamline this process, even if you're not super tech savvy. The most important thing for this section is to remember it's not about the tool itself. You know, it's not about using this specific tool or using these specific systems. It's finding what works for you. So first up is the actual folder structure itself. Like I mentioned earlier, for the sake of this show, we're going to be talking about Google Drive, but I mentioned some earlier. Dropbox, your computer's folder file system, Notion, Canva, whatever you need to use to stay organized, do that. Next is figuring out how to track what's in your workflow. This is more of a running list. So again, some people use Notion for this. Some people like Google Docs. Some people like Canva Docs. Some people have things like Asana or ClickUp. If these things sound familiar, pick the one that works for you. If these things sound foreign, Google is your best friend. If you're on YouTube after you finish this, go ahead and YouTube a couple of these things. When it comes to actually creating the content, a lot of people like and use Canva. I do this for clients so that clients can see it and make adjustments as needed. But personally, I am still in the Adobe family. So I create a lot of my things with Photoshop or Illustrator or Premiere. It's important, again, for you to use what works for you. And finally, the thing that's going to tie a lot of this together is using a scheduling tool. Now, there are a ton of different scheduling tools. And if you are someone who uses Meta, then they have a built-in scheduling tool. If you go to Meta Business Suite, you can schedule completely for free all inside of that. If you like outside schedulers or want to dabble with outside schedulers, you can use platforms like Later, Metricool, or Buffer. These all have a free option that allows you to connect at least one social platform so that you can start posting and scheduling your content completely for free, and you don't have to worry about sitting on your phone or computer to upload everything as it comes out in real time. The most important thing about this system is that you are tracking it and you are organizing everything. If having all of these tools sounds overwhelming for you, you don't need them. Even if you use a pencil and paper, a simple spreadsheet, that is completely fine. The most important thing is that you are organized and you're using what works for you in order to stay on top of your system. So now you know why people get stuck in a cycle, the 4 folders you need to break out of that cycle. And I've just shared a few tools that can help you stay more organized. Now we're going to move into execution. And a lot of this comes down to planning and creating. A lot of people, when they make this switch, they try to plan and create on the same day, which puts you back into that reactive cycle very easily. What you want to do, and what I find the most helpful, is to have a planning session and then a creating session. Some people like to call it batching. Some people create multiple things at once, and that's what batching is. You don't have to batch if you don't want to, but I'd still recommend separating your planning from your creation time. This way you can get in the right mind space and the right head space so that you can focus and execute a task to completion. So the difference is planning allows you to map out your content, plan out your content so that you know what piece goes where in this puzzle. If you're someone who likes tools and calendars, this is that arena. So think of this more of like planning your editorial calendar, planning your content calendar, planning, what pieces go where. On the opposite side of that, you have creating. This is where you're going to sit down and actually make the things that you've planned beforehand. A great analogy is planning says that I'm going to give motivation on Mondays. Creating is I'm going to sit down on Wednesday and create 4 videos for my Monday posts. You want to separate these 2 tasks. In the planning phase, you're going to say, yes, I want to talk about motivation on Mondays. I have motivation on Mondays. You'll sit there and you won't just say that, but you'll actually plan. All right, for the next 4 weeks, I'm going to talk about building yourself up, coming out of a pit, positive talk, like list out the topics. And even if you have time, set aside enough time to actually plan out the bullet points of what's going to go in that content. Is it going to be a video? Is it going to be a carousel? Is it going to be an image? Are you going to have story assets? Your planning is where you try to get as detailed as possible so that when it's time for you to create, there is no guessing. You know exactly what to do and you can use that time efficiently. For this final section of the show, I'm going to be breaking down a system that will help you do all of this in under 2 hours a week. I truly think that if you don't overcomplicate this, you can accomplish this in less than 2 hours every single week. So in this example, we're going to be breaking this down into 3 days. Your 3 days can be Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, however you want to set it up. For this example, we'll use Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Starting on Monday, you're going to set a 30-minute block. In this block, you are going to review what was posted the week prior. You are then going to plan your content as detailed as you can in that 30-minute block, set a timer, and you'll move your drafts around in order to go from ideas to drafts and try to plan that out. Do as much as you can in that 30-minute block. Moving on to Wednesday, you're going to set an hour block. During this hour, you are going to execute on as many posts as you can. Usually this leaves room for about 2 or 3, depending on the complexity of them. The key is to not make this super complex. If you have more time than 2 hours a week, by all means, extend this. But if you only have that 2 hours a week, you're going to do as much as you can in that 1 hour block when it comes to actually creating the content. Finally, on Friday, you're going to set another 30-minute timer. And in this 30-minute block, all of the drafts that you created, you're going to finalize them and schedule them for the following week. The most important thing here is that you don't need to be perfect. You need consistency. So if it's 2 hours a week, if it's 6 hours a month, whatever feels doable for you and works for you, you need to build your system around that. The faster and the easier it is for you to get into this system and this rhythm, the easier it will be for you to go longer and more consistent and more strategically in your content creation pursuit. So I hope you learned something. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Feel free to audit your own content creation system or process. Take things as needed. Leave the advice that doesn't fit or serve you. That's completely fine. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd appreciate if you shared it with someone who might need it. Or if you have questions, feel free to leave a comment or a review. 5 stars recommended, please and thank you. I do have a helpful document down in the description and the show notes of this episode. I would appreciate it if you want to check that out. Do so. If not, no harm, no foul. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Larry G. If you like this video or this show, give it a thumbs up, and I will see you next week for episode 8. Until then, remember to do the work, believe in yourself, and most importantly, keep creating. Peace.